In doing the math, we found that the amount of money flowing out will be much greater than the amount of money that we have coming in at this time.
An important announcement was recently made to Bethel families worldwide regarding a reduction and simplification of our work at Bethel and also in the field.
Some scholars feel that the original pronunciation was closer to Yahweh rather than Jehovah. Let's establish why we use the pronunciation Jehovah in English. Is it because it's the closest pronunciation to the original? No. We use the name Jehovah because it's widely recognized in English.
And do you see yourselves as Jehovah God's spokespeople on earth?
That, I think, would seem to be quite presumptuous to say that we are the only spokesperson that God is using. The scriptures clearly show that someone can act in harmony with God's Spirit in giving comfort and help.
Obedience, we expect you to accept everything, obey the decision. Circuit overseers visit, information from the faithful slave, things, and go by the guidelines. See, when these are obeyed, then indeed you're going to be made firm in the faith. Jehovah blesses obedience.
And the exact quote is, "Whoever holds back his rod hates his son." What does that mean?
So in the application of this, the term rod is used as a symbol or a metaphor.
So it's not about inflicting corporal punishment then?
It absolutely is not about inflicting corporal punishment.
It would have been when first written, wouldn't it?
Is open to question.
Well, what you're telling me, as I understand it, is that your religion, your church, is prepared to interpret the Bible having regard to contemporary social attitudes and standards. Is that right?
Obviously, Your Honour, we need to take that into consideration, and we look at other scriptures.
Does your church accept corporal punishment of children?
Our church accepts the family arrangement.
That doesn't answer my question. Do you accept corporal punishment?
In our literature, I think you'll see time and time again, we've endeavoured to explain that here.
I regret to tell you, you're still not answering my question. Sorry. Do you accept corporal punishment?
No.
You don't?
Not personally, no. And not as an organisation. We don't encourage it.
On Wednesday, September the 23rd, 2015, the worldwide Bethel family was informed of a number of adjustments that are being made in order to make the best use of dedicated funds. The governing body has directed that a number of our branch and assembly hall construction projects worldwide be delayed, reduced in scope, or in some cases, canceled.
Brother Splain masterfully explained this generation and what all it entailed. He did such a beautiful job, I'm not going to attempt to repeat it. But you know, for many years, we felt that this generation referred to the unfaithful Jews in the first century. And in the modern day fulfillment, it was felt that Jesus was referring to the wicked generation that would see the features of the conclusion of the system of things.
Would you like an easy way to keep the generation straight? An easy way is to consider the
very clear explanation.
But biblically speaking, the role of judges in the congregation it lays with men. That's what the Bible says, and that's what we endeavour to follow.
Can you give me the reference for that?
Yes. In the scriptures,
that is judges being only men. Not elders, but judges being only men.
Okay, I would have to check it. I think Deuteronomy is one of them. But I apologise, Your Honour, seeing that you asked this question, I cannot give you the exact scriptural reference, but we'll be happy to do that.
We would appreciate it.
You'll accept, I'm sure, that in many instances where a woman or young woman makes such an allegation, she would feel a lot more comfortable having to make the allegation and explain the circumstances to another woman.
I agree that the point you're trying to get at, we need to know what the victim is comfortable in doing with regard to who they speak to.
I was wondering whether you could have a structure which meant that the judicial decision as to whether or not the allegation was true could be determined by a body capable of having women represented on it, and that body's decision would then be taken to the elders in relation to decisions to disfellowship. Do you understand?
I understand, Your Honour.
Well, is it possible to make that change?
It is possible to make sure that elders are fully aware of the whole story, but for women to be elders in the congregation, that is not possible.
No, Mr. Jackson, I wasn't asking you that. I was asking you to consider whether the process may involve a determination which we outside the church would call a judicial determination. That is the allegation true or false? And then that decision having been made, the elders would then make a decision as to the consequence, being disfellowship or otherwise. Do you understand?
I do understand.
Could women be involved in the determination of whether or not the allegation is true?
Well, Your Honour, if I could say, I think they already are involved.
Not in the decision, in the decision, Mr. Jackson. Please address my question.
Okay. Yes, well, please, could I just use an example? If an underage child, otherwise how would the elders know what the facts are?
Mr. Jackson, you're not dealing with my question.
I'm sorry, I apologise.
Would you like me to put it again? Would you like me to put it again?
If you would, please.
Is it possible for the process to be modified so that that decision can be made by a body which could include women? That is, the decision as to whether or not the allegation is true or false, made by a body which could include women, and that decision would thereafter be acted upon and a decision made as to whether or not to disfellowship by the elders. Do you understand?
I do understand, and I apologise, Your Honour, for not answering directly. I didn't understand fully what you were saying. The answer, Your Honour, is such a situation would be worthy of us considering and doing research and checking the scriptures. Yes, the possibility of considering that is there.
But the governing body, and we really feel under the direction of Jehovah's Spirit, has recently undertaken a careful, prayerful study of this subject and have come to the conclusion that an adjustment in our understanding is definitely needed. An ugly, and I mean ugly, baby.
There's a practice of not reporting child sexual abuse allegations to the authorities unless required by law to do so. Do you accept that?
I'm not familiar with the statistics or the general practice. Another aspect that an elder needs to consider is he does not have the authority to lord it over or take over control of a family arrangement.
Talk about a unique perspective.
Let's take the situation in a family where one of the children, let's say the eldest, reports having been abused by her father. You would accept that the potential is that the other children in the family remain at risk.
That is correct.
And by not reporting, to the authorities, is the case not that the confidentiality of the one who reported is regarded as being more important than to protect those who are still at risk?
No, Mr. Stewart, if I could just, what I'm trying to highlight is there are several factors that make it hard for a minister of religion to make a clear-cut or quick decision on this matter.
In addition, all branches have been asked to reduce the size of their Bethel family.
Now, turning to another aspect that we've dealt with, which is the question of the two-witness rule, you'll be aware that if there's no confession, then two witnesses to serious wrongdoing are required in order that there is sufficient evidence to establish a judicial committee. Do you understand that?
I do understand that.
The reality is, if there's only one witness in the case of child sexual abuse, then it cannot be taken further by the elders, and as it's put in the literature, it's left in the hands of Jehovah.
The number of temporary special pioneers will be reduced significantly.
Many people today find the idea of being controlled by anyone to be distasteful. I think you'd agree many in the world have this attitude: nobody tells me what to do. They all say they're thinking for themselves. And I don't know if you know the news, but my wife has a lot of Irish content. And she's a bit upset when I broke it to her that in Ireland, first country, to have a popular vote approving same-sex marriage. So her Irish was coming up out of her there a bit. I won't go beyond that, as I have to go home later. So the fact is, they all come up with how independent they are and they think for themselves. And this was addressed yesterday in one of the symposiums, but we're going to repeat the point here. And you'll notice that this has been done in this program. Repetition's the mother of retention. So, and make no mistake, he had powerful expressions. This was not, well, take these things away from here. This really bothers me. No, he's all man.
If, however, the man happened to meet the engaged girl in the field, and the man overpowered her and lay down with her, the man who lay down with her is to die by himself, and you must do nothing to the girl. The girl has not committed a sin deserving of death, for he happened to meet her in the field, and the engaged girl screamed, but there was no one to rescue her. So the point of this last example is that there's no second witness, is there? Because the woman's in the field, she screamed, but there was no one to rescue her. Do you accept that?
Could I explain, Mr. Stewart, the two witnesses needed can be in some cases the circumstances. I think, was it an example given?
I'll come to that, Mr. Jackson.
Okay, so
we'll get through this a lot quicker and easier if we just address it one step at a time. So
okay.
the present step,
So the answer to your question?
the present step is this, is that in that example you accept it's a case where there was no other witness beyond the woman herself.
There was no other witness except the woman herself, but added to that were the circumstances.
Yes, well, the circumstances were that she was raped in the field.
Mm-hmm.
And,
yes, but they were circumstances.
and it was sufficient, there being only one witness, it was nevertheless sufficient for the conclusion that the man should be stoned to death.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now, is it...
I think we're agreeing on the point.
Yes, is it not the case that had Jesus been asked about a case of sexual abuse, he may have referred back to this part of Deuteronomy and said that it's not required to have two witnesses?
I certainly would like to ask Jesus that, and I can't at the moment. I hope to in the future. But that's a hypothetical question, which if we had an answer, then we could support what you said.
The scriptural basis to the two-witness rule in relation to cases of sexual abuse has a proper foundation.
We believe it does.
There will also be some reduction in the number of special pioneers.
That is not my understanding. But again, as I said, it's not my field. That goes into policy with regard to those type of things. But from my personal experience, that's not the case.
Well, listen, you say it's not your field, but you remember the governing body, which is responsible, as you've said, for the whole field, and you've been a member for 10 years, and all the committees are responsible to and accountable to the governing body.
Some who were previously serving as temporary special pioneers will be willing to continue in their assignment as regular pioneers.
Disassociated, but has sought merely to become inactive or to fade, they then still subject to the organization's discipline and rules.
If they acknowledge being one of Jehovah's Witnesses.
It's right, isn't it, in the case of both disassociation and disfellowshipping, the remaining members of the Jehovah's Witnesses cannot associate with the disassociated or disfellowshipped person.
Yes.
And that it's even family members not living in the same household. Freedom from the organization on the one hand and friends, family and social network on the other.
I thought I made it quite clear that I don't agree with that supposition. Let me clarify. If someone no longer wants to be an active Jehovah's Witness and they're not in the community viewed as a Jehovah's Witness, we do not have a so-called spiritual police force to go and handle that.
You're disagreeing on the example of what they do wrong. And that's not my point. My point is they may do nothing wrong, but they're still subject to the rules of the organization in the event that at some point they do something wrong.
I will agree with that, but I don't agree with the sweeping statement they only have the two choices. Well, that was the point I was disagreeing with.
Well, it's right then, isn't it? Because if they don't want to be subject to the discipline and rules of the organization, then they have to leave by actively dissociating. Isn't that the truth?
That's if they definitely don't want to be, yes. But there are some that do not want to make that active move.
Well, the result then is they're faced with the choice between the freedom from the organization on the one hand and having to lose their family and friends and social network on the other.
That's how you would like to put it, Mr. Stewart.
You've put it that they have a choice to leave or not to leave. For someone who wants to leave, perhaps because they've suffered abuse by someone in the organization and don't feel that it's been treated properly or adequately, it's a very difficult choice, isn't it? Because they must choose.
I agree with that.
And it can be a very cruel choice for them, not so.
I agree. It's a difficult choice.
And it can be personally devastating because they can lose their whole social network and their families.
That can be the case, yes.
Would you accept then that putting people to that choice through this system of disassociating from them, or shunning as it's sometimes referred to, is contrary to the Jehovah's Witness belief in freedom of religious choice?
No, I don't accept that. I think you're jumping to a conclusion there, but I understand that you have that opinion.
It must be acknowledged we can only do so much with the funds at our disposal.
Mr. Jack, you were baptized at age 13, am I right?
I certainly was, yes.
And there are, in fact, many Jehovah's Witnesses who are baptized at an age even younger than that.
There have been some I have met that have been baptized younger.
And do you consider that at that age, someone is old enough and mature enough to make a decision affecting the rest of their lives?
Yes, I do. But I've worked with people that have been baptized when they were 11, and they have stuck by that determination their whole life.
Well, that may be because they can't leave the organization without leaving behind everyone whom they know?
Anything is possible.
And do you accept that putting people to that choice makes your organization in many respects a captive organization?
I do not accept that at all.
Beginning in January, our public magazines will be published bi-monthly. That many of our brothers have found it difficult to keep up. This adjustment will not only allow us to use available funds effectively, it will help our brothers to keep up with.
Is there a scriptural basis to this policy of shunning?
Yes, 1 Corinthians is the scripture, and no doubt you've seen it already. But
Sorry, Mr. Jackson, I'm really just asking, is there a scriptural basis, and you've identified what it is? Because my next question is can it change? In other words, is there a basis upon which you foresee that your organization might be able to change that policy?
no.
We will be reducing personnel at Bethel. Some Bethel family members will be invited to serve in the field. In addition to their regular work, Bethel family members will be caring for many of the services that were previously provided by fellow Bethelites.
But do you accept that the Jehovah's Witness organization has a problem with child abuse amongst its members?
I accept that child abuse is a problem right throughout the community, and it's something that we've had to deal with as well.
Do you accept that the manner in which your organization has dealt with allegations of child sexual abuse has also presented problems?
We've changed the policy would indicate that the original policies weren't perfect.
In the next few months, a good number of special full-time servants will be returning to the ranks of the regular pioneers.
That the work of this Royal Commission is beneficial, do you accept then that the Royal Commission's efforts are genuine and well-intentioned?
I certainly do.
And would you disagree then with anyone who said that the efforts to highlight and deal with child sexual abuse in the Jehovah's Witness Church is engaging in apostate lies?
Another way we can contribute to the oneness, rejecting false stories that are designed to separate us from Jehovah's organization. As an example, think about the apostate-driven lies and dishonesties that Jehovah's organization is permissive toward pedophiles. I mean, that is ridiculous, isn't it? If anybody takes action against someone who would threaten our young ones and takes action to protect our young ones, it's Jehovah's organization. We reject outright such lies.
Our expenses have greatly increased. For instance, we have experienced a tremendous growth in personnel. As of September the 1st, 2015, we reached 83,790 in special full-time service. Can you imagine the cost involved to care for so many special full-time servants? At the same time, many of our major branch facilities are more than 30 years old. These offices require extensive maintenance and renovation. We needed to reduce expenses. To accomplish this, we would need to reduce personnel, reduce the number of publications we're printing, put some non-essential construction projects on hold, and reduce or eliminate various services at Bethel.
Mr. Jackson, has the governing body considered apologizing to survivors of child sexual abuse at the hands of elders within the organization?
I haven't been in any discussions with regard to that.
Is that something that you foresee might happen? In other words, that an apology at least be considered?
The governing body has apologized on other matters, so for me to say I can't speak collectively for everybody, but we have apologized on things in the past in other areas, so it is perceivable.
We are confident that Jehovah is richly blessing the worldwide work.